Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk HR. Today, we're going to talk about a topic, and we're recording it during Mental Health Awareness Day, which was the 10th of October, which is it's okay not to be okay. Now, many people will say you're British, you know, you put on a front, you put on a smile, you deal with it. No, you tell everyone that everything's brilliant. And then you've got other people in modern businesses saying, well, actually, you've got to bring your whole self to work. Not just part of you, your whole self. You have to tell everyone everything. And there's probably two extremes, but somewhere is probably in the middle where we need to be trying to get to. And to try and help me navigate this today, I'm joined by Charlie from OK Positive and Pam to try and let us know that it is okay not to be okay. And it's okay to not have to tell everyone everything that's going on within your personal troubles and stuff like that. Sometimes it's okay to just go, I need a bit of time. I'm just trying to sort a few personal things out. You don't have to fully open up to everything. Charlie, it's been a while. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. Excited to be chatting about this because it's a topic, obviously, that I'm very passionate about and very opinionated. So excited to shout that across.
Opinionated, I don't know. Pam, straight away, obviously, when we joined in this, we're like, yeah, let's get on the it's okay not to be okay one. So is this topic dear to your heart? Close to your heart? Something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, both. Absolutely. Yeah, one from personal experience and obviously from a HR capacity point of view as well, supporting individuals and managers through navigating the way through situations where people might not be okay.
Well, we'll start today by just sort of looking at some of the definitions. So the World Health Organization has defined mental health as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes their own potential and can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to contribute to their community. It doesn't feel very... I don't know. That doesn't sound like mental health to me. That doesn't sound like just being able to do that thing. What do you think of that sort of definition from who, Charlie?
I think ultimately the way to describe mental health is the hierarchy of needs of individuals. So everything in your life that impacts you or is impacted by mental health. So you're talking about your finances, your housing, your relationships, your physical health, your activities, your work. All these different elements make up who you are as an individual, and mental health will impact those or will be impacted by those situations or stresses. And when they talk about stress being something that we need to be able to cope with, stress is actually sometimes good for the body. You need to be stressed in situations. The problem is when it becomes overwhelmed and it's very regular, that it starts to build up. And people don't take enough of a preventative or proactive model for this for themselves, because we do things for fitness. We look at, I set up a gym plan, I set up an exercise plan, I set goals, I set targets. I want to understand my heart rates, my sleep rates, all these different things. But we don't do the same for mental health because we have this idea in life that we have to be happy all the time, or that's the goal, or this is the way it's got to be. And mental health will change all the way through your life based on your experiences. And that's arguably the reason life is exciting, right? If you had happiness every day, you wouldn't know what it meant. So yeah, for me, essentially what they're trying to position there is that it's your whole self impacting the people around you, society, your progress and success. But actually, for me, it's just what makes you up as a human being. It's part of everything that you do. So it's slightly different, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the CIPD research has shown, Pam, that roughly 1 in 4 people experience a mental health problem each year. And that, again, a mental health problem doesn't necessarily mean that you're on the verge of a nervous breakdown. It just means you're having a bad month and you're not necessarily in a great resilience place to just go, okay, that's absolutely fine. It creates a bit of depression. It creates a bit of anxiety. It creates a situation where you need to make some positive steps to improve that mental health, or somebody needs to help you make some positive. It's not a case of just every mental health problem is these big words that everyone sort of throws around, like depression, anxiety, medication. It's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as Charlie said as well, that it depends on what's happening at that particular time. And for some people, unfortunately, there's 5 things thrown at them all at once. And if it was just one thing, they'd be able to cope with it. But when you start to pile things on, and there's just a repercussion of things, then unfortunately it can be difficult to handle. But that then doesn't mean that you've got mental health issues, or it just means that you've got more to contend with at that time. And it's more than about how can you work your way through that? What is the support that you've got? What support do you need? And then working your way through that then means that you come out the other side of that. And for some people, that is more difficult at that time, because they might have a different starting point. So yeah, it really does depend upon what's happening, and it's got to be taken in that context as well, hasn't it?
Now, how important, Charlie, is understanding yourself when it comes to sort of defining mental health and defining your own mental health? Like, how important is it to really sort of get a grasp of what lifts you up, what pushes you down, how things can change and rotate? How much would you recommend someone to just sort of track and understand their own mental stability in terms of what brings them up and what brings them down? Like, coffee brings me up, chocolate brings me up, but if I ate it all the time, I'd be very far down.
Yeah, I think understanding and noticing how you feel is probably the most important step for anyone when it comes to mental health. It's built into psychological models like acceptance commitment therapy or CBT. It's noticing what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, what you can do about it, because it's very relevant to you as an individual. It's unique to you. Every situation will be different. I stub my toe, you stub your toe, Pam stubs her toe in a day. We're all going to react very differently to that. If you're having money troubles, I'm getting evicted from my house, someone's going through a divorce. These situations or external stresses will affect you in a different way, and that will impact the way that you behave or the way that you react to certain things. And the problem is, as a society, we don't understand ourselves, so we don't have that starting point or the framework to go, what can I do in this situation? Because traditionally, mental health has been hidden. There's a stigma, and it's always, this is a mountain I need to climb to solve or fix myself. It's not. It's a roller coaster all the way through your life. It will follow you the whole way, and you'll be learning as you go. But if you don't understand what you're feeling as that first point, that self-awareness, and align it to your life and what you want to do and how you want to behave or your values, you're going to struggle because you're on the back foot already. And it's not Everest. It's not like I've got to fix and get to the top of this mountain. It's every day, every week, have a more positive conversation, take a small action to help a certain situation that you're going through, because then it reduces your need to overreact to a certain situation or panic or get to that point of crisis, because okay, I've been through this before, or this is something that happens. This is what I feel. This is what I can do about it. And if you break it down into those chunks, it can be far more powerful. It's worked for me. I used to have 3 or 4 panic attacks a day. I hid all of my emotions, my struggles. I buried it down. I probably would argue I drank too much alcohol. I didn't exercise. My behaviors changed based on the fact that I was struggling and I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't notice it. I've now started doing those things, and I've not seen those behaviors. I manage it. I understand at the earlier stage what's making me feel anxious, what's making me feel stressed. And if we can get more people educated on that, just by doing it in their own way, then we're going to have less of these. The knock-on effects, we're going to have less of these crisis situations, which we're seeing more and more of.
And Pam, I think we're in a bit of a mental fatigue type of mental health epidemic at the moment for people, where people have gone through COVID. There's been one panic, 2 lockdowns. That was nearly 2 years worth of thing. Then we had the energy crisis, and people coming out of the energy crisis, and people were worried about heating their homes and turning heating on, and everything that's gone through that. The discretionary effort put on people to just sort of help businesses stay alive and afloat and stuff like that. Then the cost of food went through the roof, and people were struggling to feed their families in different ways. We're coming back to the energy crisis on rotation again, with a general election that's going to cost multi-millions of pounds and needs to happen. People are probably feeling more mental health fatigue than anything at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, because we've gone through such rapid change in such a short period of time, and it's just, again, lots being piled on people, and the impact of that still happens to this day, especially from COVID, with long COVID and loss of relatives, people still struggling with the impact of the virus, etc. People are still having to deal with that and get on with life. Run a house, bring up children, care for relatives, and with maybe pressures still around going from home working to hybrid, to some companies now saying that you can't work from home anymore, you've got to be back in the office. It's a big change then for people, and I think there's elements of, I see a lot of social anxiety still as well, being in crowds and commuting. There's always stories in the news that COVID's spreading again, and whatever it may be on that particular week. So there is a lot still for people to contend with, but I think that the weight of it just seems even more compounded nowadays. And I think as Charlie said, building up those individual coping strategies is critical for each of us to be able to deal with whatever we've got going on in our life at that time.
Now, we're going to go into some sort of personal experience and stuff like that. Obviously, my wife works for the NHS. If some of you have been on another episode, you probably know that. And a lot of what people are saying at the moment is that we need to reduce waiting lists. I know when I personally was going through central nervous system problems, my wait was 12 months to see the pain team. So you've got some people that are going through mental challenges, and there's nothing they can do at this moment in time because they can't accelerate things. And I know people are talking about increasing overtime for people in hospitals, which isn't a problem, which probably isn't going to work, because all of those have no discretionary effort left in them. They're all empty batteries. So we've got a recruitment issue, and there are a lot of, probably, Charlie, genuinely unsolvable problems that are creating people a lot of mental stress at this moment in time. And there are things employers could do to help accelerate certain things. They could sort of create a private healthcare fund. People could do, there are things employers can do, aren't they, to sort of really help people manage things, because from a public sector perspective, we can't just throw money at this and it's solved, because you're talking about decades worth of training and about 5 years worth of burnout. So there are some things people need to, and organizations need to do to get involved in this stuff now, isn't there?
Well, yeah, certainly looking at the private sector that are more focused on personnel kind of mental and physical health checks, because it's in their vested interest for their staff to be healthy, happy and productive. It's a win-win for everyone. I think from the public healthcare perspective, there are ways that we can use or do more with less. I think technology is one of the arms that they're looking at. Because one of the classic examples of this about things that you can and can't control, there are a lot of things that people can't control, as you talk about the waiting lists, etc. At the moment, in a simplified form, we have a model where Dave goes to the GP, gets diagnosed with cancer, for example, is given a treatment plan and sent away with leaflets to local charities or national charities like Macmillan, etc. And the issue is they don't know how that's affecting Dave's hierarchy of needs. So his care, his family, his work. There's so many stresses around that, alongside now this new diagnosis. But there are charities in local areas that are doing amazing work for those sort of things, that don't know where Dave is, and Dave doesn't know where they are. And so actually linking in and utilizing technology to connect Dave, it may just be that he needs a dog walker while he's going to chemo. And there are 4 or 5 charities in the local area that specify in these different areas. So being able to connect them, rather than people going back to the waiting list or emergency services or contacting their GP because there is there's a waiting list or there's problems like that. We can solve this through other ways. But in terms of workplaces, the issue has always been that these resources are very reactive. Workplaces aren't experts on mental health. They're not experts on public health or any of those areas. So they rely upon resources and signposting. But the issue is they have to control what they can control as well. And for an organization, it's how flexible your workplace is, how psychologically flexible it is. Are you allowing people to work that makes it as easy for them in their lives outside of work with the things they can't control? Are you making it that when they come to work, they're supported, they've got information at the touch of a button, they've got services that they can go to. But the problem is they don't really know. And that's, we're seeing that across the market, that, people will spend a load of money on a benefits package, but it may be that their team don't even need it. They're more focused about the working hours, and they're more focused about how many meetings they have, or the fact that they're all remote. And so it's about controlling what you can control. And yes, certainly the private sector has an opportunity to do something more impactful, because the ones that do it retain their staff for longer, attract more staff, gain referrals. But it's about getting to that point and understanding how to do it, which I think we're just at the early stages of.
Yeah, and one of the more critical parts of this is organisations not just doing a survey and doing a load of things. It's about constant communication. It's about engagement. It's about what's going to benefit your life. How can we, one, make you feel more comfortable, happy and healthy at work? How can we contribute to that? What are you looking to do? And yes, you can't do everything for everyone. I'm not suggesting that everyone's got a unique benefits package, but there are probably some really quick wins with some really good conversation that could be had that can really help identify some things that a company could do quite comfortably within their budget to support people, isn't there?
Yeah, well, it's just about listening and transparency. And the issue is the traditional methods of surveying, spot surveying, doesn't work because everyone's got survey fatigue. Nothing happens. They don't see anything. Seeing is believing. And actually, if you have a medium to ask people on a regular basis, what are the things that are going well, what isn't going well, and then actually can action initiatives based on that feedback, you're creating a 360 culture of communication. And it's the first step, because if you empower people to have a voice, you can't be everything to everyone. But if you're seeing a particular trend that is worrying, that's causing people to want to leave, or extra levels of stress, and you can easily solve it, that's something to do. If you can't solve it and it's a bigger issue around pay or around budgets, then you can be transparent and communicate the reasons why you're doing things a certain way. And the issue we have is that there's a mistrust or a discord between employees and employers. But the irony is, even the people in HR in senior positions or the SLT are all humans that have created a model that worked originally for them. And therefore, actually, the irony is that when it grows and there's more people, you've got to start looking at how it works for everyone else. Because I've seen companies, Pam, that have been remote work and attracted new staff because they're remote, and now bringing people back to the office, but they live 3 hours away each way. It's not realistic. And so you've got to have a bit of flexibility around that, I find.
I'm going to give you a really impossible question. So I will apologize for this straight away. And I know there's no right answer to this, but if roughly 2/3 of people say they're feeling comfortable talking about their own mental health, we know people, I think it was 60% of people have a distrust of HR because they think they're going to go tell managers and leaders about all their problems, and they're probably going to lose their job because they tell them they're not okay. We've got senior leaders who don't communicate how they're functioning because you don't want to demonstrate any form of weakness to your team. No, you have to have the answer for everything. How do you start this conversation? Because they don't trust HR, they don't trust the leaders, and they think everyone's out to get them, and rightly so, because there's so much evidence the other way, because of how social media pushes the extreme ends of narratives, as opposed to people don't go on and say, I had a chat with my boss because I was feeling a bit blue and the boss was great about it. They go, I had a conversation with my boss, he fired me. And that's what makes it social media, and that's what gets clicks and engagement. How do we start this sort of path? Told you it was a difficult one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as well, for a business, they've got to kind of keep it on track for them. Of course, people are going to read the press and look at social media. Of course they are, and they're going to come with that in mind. But I think a business, and certainly if they've got HR in there, they need to be setting that scene. They need to be laying out what they want to achieve, why they want to achieve it. What's the benefits for people taking part. And in the early days, until that trust has been created, then having an open forum and allowing people to just come and listen as to maybe what the understanding of the strategy, the mental health approach, the support functions that they've got in place. And in time, people will start to see that there is no hidden agenda. because it shouldn't be. Because again, if people have got that fear of repercussions of talking, then they're just not going to partake in it, are they? So they've got to start at that point and have that open forum. Start the conversations, but keep going. How many times do we start initiatives in organisations? People maybe don't take part in the way that we thought they would at the beginning, so it gets parked, and then it just becomes another management fad, and then you lose that credibility then as an organisation as to what you're trying to achieve. So we've got to keep going. Is it Wednesday at 12 o'clock every week that we do this, and we have that meeting, that capability for people to come along? And in the early days, nobody's partaking, so we'll share our understanding, we'll share what we're planning to do, and just start the conversation. And in time, it will be that one person that contributes, that then it's like, okay, that's progress, how do we build on that? And then ultimately we then start to create that culture where people do feel psychologically safe, that they aren't going to, like you say, be reprimanded for maybe what they've talked about or what they might be experiencing.
I'd love to add to
that.
Yeah, because there's two elements for me. It's reducing the stigma from a mental health perspective, but also that I love that engagement piece about, it's something you build into a culture. Because for me, when it comes to onboarding, that's no one joins a company. I think trust is lost, it's not earned. Like in any walk of life, you go into a relationship, you don't go, oh, this person's a creep and then they earn my trust. You start with trusting someone and then you lose their trust. And that's the same thing with companies. When someone is employed into a business, they're excited. There's a reason you wanted to join that business, or there's motivating factors. It's when they start doing those behaviors of not listening, not changing anything, keeping business models and operating models that don't work for people within the organization or the working conditions. And then you lose the trust, and then you've lost them to any form of engagement or any form of communication. So it's building that from the very start of going, people here are listened to, and that longevity of it that Pam talks about, of actually reducing stigma in mental health, is by sharing experiences. I always say that asking people how they're doing is like asking someone in the street for £20. The likelihood is they're going to be like, I'm not giving you £20. But if you go around giving people £20, they're quite likely to potentially give it back to you at some point, or to pay it forward to someone else. It's the same thing about opening these conversations. If you can have lived experience from your senior leaders talking openly about mental health, then suddenly that will filter down, or it'll filter sideways. And this is those two areas, but it's got to be a serious conversation. It's got to be a project. It's got to be something that continuously is run, not just a fad, as Pam says, that just, we tried this thing, it didn't work. Learn why it didn't work and then try another approach is the way I'd always recommend it.
What role do you think leaders have in talking about their mental health? Because and this is something that I've been sort of working through recently, is as someone, I'm dyslexic, so neurodiverse to some degree, but I never announced it, because I don't want to give people not a reason not to employ me. So I've never told anyone, if some certain people knew when I worked with them, but I never put it on an application form. You look at people with ADHD, majority of people who are really open and loud about it are self-employed, because they don't necessarily, and for the similar reason, they don't want to tell their employer and give them a reason not to do something. Only 22% of autistic people are currently in work based on ONS current data. And obviously they find it a lot harder to, should we say, hide their true self, because they are naturally more their true self. So we've got, the reason I'm giving this example is there's an element where, as a leader, I hid my neurodiversity because I didn't want people to think I wasn't capable just because I couldn't spell. But at the same time, I'm going through this period at the moment where probably I would have helped more people if I had just been honest about it and told people that I had, dyslexia. Some people probably knew, some people could work it out. Other people probably looked at my emails and went, this dickhead can't spell to save his life. Where do leaders fit, Pam, in terms of being honest about their own mental challenges? And they don't have to tell their entire life story, but they've got to give some indication of periods where they've struggled, they've done this, their approach is what they do. Because before we went live, Charlie gave a story about how everyone's, on social media talking about how they get up at 4 a.m. in the morning, jump in an ice bath, run 20K, work for 7 hours, go to the gym, go for a lovely meal, and blah, blah, blah. Life's wonderful. It's not life, really, is it, for majority of people? So what's leaders' role in this? Is it modeling behavior? Is it being open to people, communicating back? What do you think they should be doing?
I think it's a mixture of both, but I also think that it's got to be done on that individual's terms. So yes, they're a leader, whatever, that job title might come with it. However, it doesn't mean, like you say, that they've got to disclose everything. It's more about, well, today I'm struggling to stay focused because, I didn't have a good night's sleep last night. What they don't need to then say is that, I'm suffering with depression. But what they can say is give a glimpse as to, what does that look like for them on that particular day? And then, leading by example, talking about it openly, how are they going to get through that today? So, I am struggling today, didn't sleep too well last night because, that might be what happened for them. So, is it okay if we, maybe make the meeting half an hour? Excuse me, make the meeting half an hour instead of the 1 hour that we had planned in the diary. So, they can lead by example in that instance, in that, that they're admitting or disclosing, whichever way you want to look at it, that they're having that challenge on that particular day, but they're doing it within the realms that they feel comfortable. And then in time, it might be something then that they do want to go into detail about. But I think, they can lead, but do it on a basis that works for them, and not like, like you said, James, that you might feel that you didn't do everything that you could in that situation by not telling everybody that you're dyslexic. But I think you can still absolutely contribute and support people by talking about things that work for you.
There's a really good lead that I know in the NHS at the moment, Charlie, and very compassionate, listens to a lot of people, and he's really good. And
I can't hear.
The only time he's talked about his mental health challenges is now he's been diagnosed with cancer. And he's telling people, I'm struggling at this moment. As Pam said, can we make these meetings shorter for this reason, that reason, and stuff like that, because I'm just not working properly today. Is that something? How would you approach this as a leader in your organization, talking about mental health, if your computer's working? You there? He's not there. He will be back. Now, whilst I've got you, Pam, NHS data suggests about a third of adults with a common mental health condition receive treatment so only 33% of people seem to get any form of treatment or go for treatment in mental health. A lot of other stuff is just people deal, tolerate, resilience. And humans are naturally quite resilient anyway, aren't they? There's a lot of these things where people can actually just work through these challenges themselves. And it's just knowing the difference, really, isn't it, between I need some expert assistance and it's something that it's just a bad period of time and I know that I'll get through it.
Yeah, and I think as an individual, we touched on it before about feeling empowered, feeling that we've got a way through, and building up our own little toolkits, whatever that might look like for us. We might have a place that we like to go to, we might have a place or a technique that we like to use, and it can be as simple as taking yourself away and reading a book, for example. Do we get that space to move away from the busyness of the day and the challenges of the day and the routine, putting in that time each day for you as an individual to have that headspace to process what's happened, to process what we might need to do the day after, and the enormity of what we might be facing. And if we're not doing that, then we're just constantly running at 100 miles an hour all of the time, never getting that downtime, and then that does impact our ability to cope with things that come through. So if we're able to do that on a regular basis, then we're feeling more empowered and able to deal with things. And that's not to say that ultimately we do need that extra support and to draw upon it, but it means then that we're more self-sufficient and not having to be reliant on waiting to get into the doctors or being on a wait list. We've got no control over that. And I think when you don't feel in control, that is then part of the issue, isn't it?
I guess anxiety breeds that sort of mental. I know when it took a year for me to get diagnosed with the infection of my central nervous system, I knew for about 3/4 of that, you go through every single variant that could possibly be under the sun, and it's the anxiety of not knowing that creates all the issues, because you don't know how bad it is, and every single human goes to the worst case scenario. I can guarantee I went to every worst case scenario that it possibly could be. Now, Charlie, in 2020, it was reported that mental health services in the UK were receiving around about 2 million more requests annually. So that's a positive sign that people are actually trying to take action for their own mental health. One thing that I was speaking to a burnout specialist about was the fact that the importance of actually taking a 2-week holiday out of your holiday per year. So ensuring that you don't just take little breaks here, there, and everywhere, but you actually take 2 weeks out, because that actually gives you a chance to completely switch off from work. You're not starting again next week. You're not open to it. What do you think the importance of breaks are in terms of from a routine, from a structure perspective, in terms of mental health?
It's once again, for me, it's relevant to the individual. It's unique to the individual, because I speak to people that need extended breaks and need time for themselves to focus on themselves. I see other people that are very hyper focused on, I need to be progressing, I need to be moving forward, that don't really stop. I'm one that gets burnt out from the way that I work, and I know that. So I regularly schedule in every 3 months. I will take time completely away from my work, and I will focus on the things I'm passionate about, the things I like. But it doesn't always have to be a stop. I'm going to do 2 weeks here, I'm going to do 1 week here. For each people, it can be during a day taking, okay, I'm going to finish slightly early today to go and do something with my family, which is what I'm passionate about. It doesn't have to be a massive stop off away from work, because that's the issue we've always kind of had with time-based working. You're in from 9 to 5 every day. That's your routine. That's what you're used to. No one's productive from 9 to 5 the whole way through. Breaks internally there are useful in those smaller examples. But yeah, if people are run ragged for about 3 months, they'll need extended time off, because they always say, you don't spend time on your wellness, you're going to be forced to spend time on your illness. And I think it is just very unique to each individual. I'm someone that doesn't like switching off from work all of the time, but I really like to be present with the people I'm with. So I will switch off. I'll force myself into these situations where I go, actually, work's over here. I'll always come back to it to give myself time. But it doesn't have to be 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, forced holiday over this period, because that's not necessarily the way everyone wants to work or how everyone lives their lives. So it's just very unique, I think, to each person on how they react, and noticing the stages of burnout, because if you notice the stages too late, that's when you get to the crisis point.
I think what you're talking about, though, is it seems like you've mastered in a level of mindfulness of going, well, if I'm in this situation, I'm in this situation. So if I'm with friends, I'm with friends. If I'm in work, I'm in work. And a lot of people struggle with mindfulness of like being in a situation and things. So I think it's a really good example of if you're able to switch off in that way, you're able to be present with people, you're able to get involved in a situation. It probably does give you that mental stress break from the pressures of life and bills and everything that goes on and work and how you're doing it. What do you think on it, Pam? Do you think I'm sure you agree with Charlie, it depends on the person, but what advice would you give to someone that's trying to sort of break bad habits from their mental health perspective?
I think nowadays we're too connected constantly. We've got watches that connect to our emails, so we've got phones that are constantly pinging. That there's just so much that we've got access to, isn't there? So I think when we are, if we're on that time with the family, spend time with the family. Don't have the phone checking emails and taking phone calls here and there. If you're working, work. I know it's not always that clear cut, because you might have people that are reliant on you, and working from home, etc. You might have kids in the background that are poorly, you might have caring responsibilities. But I think if we can take that moment and do what we say that we're doing at that time, rather than trying to multitask and be something to so many things and people at one time, that in itself is exhausting when you're constantly doing that. And I think if we can just do that one thing at that one time, that really can help to stop this multi-layering of what I think we have built up that habit to do.
Do you think, and I'll ask it to you both, I'll stick with you to start with, Pam. Do you think where we need to be in terms of talking about mental health within organisations and with each other, or do you think how far along the being able to talk about this comfortably for people do you think we are? Do you think it's there, or do you think we're still scratching the surface of it?
I think it will vary, depends upon the organisation that you're in. I think for some organisations, they do this brilliantly. I think they've got the pitch right, they've got the tone right, they've got the buy-in, from senior management. They've got people that feel that they can trust the organisation, and talk about what might be happening for them. I think in some organisations we still get it terribly wrong. I don't think anybody sets out on a morning to do that. I just think it's maybe they've not got the resources or the education to deal with that. So I think it really does depend. If you look at social media, there's lots more talked about now, isn't there? Because there's lots of people that are prepared to talk about it, and are leading that way. And which is fantastic, because that then does help everybody that might not be at that place. But I think the important thing is that we've got to continue to talk, and we can't let this slip down the agenda, because it's not going to get any better by pretending that it's got better and just thinking that it has. We've got to keep it constant. So good, but still more to do.
What do you think, Charlie? Do you think we're at this point or not?
Yeah, I'd agree a lot with Pam, but I would say for me, across, particularly in the UK, we've been doing a lot of work with a university around constructive criticism, uncomfortable thoughts, uncomfortable conversation, and handling those and using them as a vehicle for change and positive initiatives or negative initiatives to negate something that's been going wrong, that they've been doing in a certain way. And we're not there yet, because people don't like giving feedback or taking feedback on an individual level. Organizations don't sometimes want to know what's going wrong or what they're failing at, because that's admitting that we're not as good as we think we are. Everyone's a work in progress, every organization is, but until we can create cultures within organizations where people can say, this isn't working for this group based on this in this team because of this, and this is what we should do better. And an organization looks at these and goes, right, which ones can we focus on? Which impacts can we make in initiatives? And measure whether it changes or not. We're going to be still stuck in this thing of, well, we'll hire some people as first aiders, we'll have an employee assistance program, we'll have these resources and structures outside or surrounding it in place. But if the core of the apple is rotten, then the outside is just shiny for no reason. And so it's not a criticism of organizations, but the movement to negative, as we call negative feedback or moaning, has to be completely repositioned as constructive, as we want to know what's going wrong. We want to know where people are struggling so that we can put initiatives in to try and fix it. Because no one's perfect as an organization or as an individual. There are ways that we can all behave better, and that are our responsibilities of mental health, encouraging people to be more open, understanding what best ways people work. So I just don't think it's a constant work in progress to say we are somewhere here on the line. I don't think so. I think every organization is unique to it. They all have different ways, different audiences. But that area of feedback and research is a massive topic because it's the key, but no one really knows how to do it.
And it's really tricky, you know. I think about things on. I'll go back to social media as an example because that's where everything's extreme. So you'll see someone does something deplorable in social media, and they may fit on the spectrum of on the left or on the right, and people are piling on, and then suddenly the voice of, oh, their mental health's been affected, and you can't criticize them anymore, and that's how people sort of it's kind of being used as a, and I'm not for pylon or anything like that, but some people use it as potentially a get out of jail free card for certain things that need to be investigated further. And I think Charlie's right, Pam, in terms of actually that it's that critical conversation and factual conversation. Mental health is a serious thing, and it's an emotional, and you can't quantify it. But if you're having a factual, I've forgotten what, critically evaluated conversation with somebody that's got some information about how you can do it, and then you agree steps with somebody as to how you're going to help them along and stuff like that, and touch, you can, as an organization, you can manage it a lot better than just going, oh, they say they're not happy with this, therefore no. So you kind of have to manage it along a little bit, don't you, in terms of with data, with information, with agreed outcomes almost.
Yeah, and I think, that having that at the back of it, for every conversation that you're having as an individual on the receiving end of that, even if you don't like what's being said, if there is some kind of source or example, really stated reasons why, then in time you can get on board with that. It might take some time, and it might take a few attempts to get to that point, but you're going to accept that better if it is backed up, like you say, with stats, with figures, etc., or whatever the situation is. And even if there's a difficult conversation that's got to happen because maybe conduct or absences, etc., have started to become an issue, we can't not deal with that if that is impacting the business. Presumably that will be impacting that individual as well if they're not attending work maybe on a regular basis, because pay will be impacted. There might be bonus implications. There's going to be lots of repercussions for these things, so we can't shy away from it. And I think in every organization then we've got to be doing that. But it's interesting what Charlie said about having those conversations. I think we've got to start, and I know it happens in education setting. Let's start with that generation now before they get into the workplace, because if they're used to having these conversations and understanding expectations in the work, then they're going to be more open to how that situation might be managed, and what is expected of them in a workplace.
I wanted to say something controversial. I don't know if I should, Charlie, but so I'll do it because why not? In for a penny. So Pam makes a really good point that we've got to start having these conversations now. And we've got to start getting people comfortable being uncomfortable, and we should be working with this generation now. But we're taking actions like, for example, participation trophies, and not winning and losing, and being gracious in defeat and gracious in success. So how are we preparing people for constructive conversations if everyone who participates is a winner? And that's a really difficult question.
It's very difficult for adults because, as we see in education sector, younger people are feeling like everything's being put on them, and they're being told this is how you have to do things, this is the way it is. There's no listening from understanding what's relevant to them. And if we're very bad at taking feedback as a generation, how can we be expected to teach younger people how to do it effectively if we don't ourselves? And I think this is the problem with, this emphasis that everyone has to be happy, everything has to be perfect. That's just not how life works. But it's about understanding what works for us, how we can best deal with things. I always go back to a relationship example because there's so much between a work colleague relationship, it's very similar. It's because we were seeing the stats around managers have just as much effect on individuals' mental health as their partner does. So it's the same kind of, you're there with them all day in a space. When you look at the best relationships they're talking about, if you have a disagreement, you have something that you're feeling, air that, let the other person air it, and then come together with a solution of how you can both impact the outcome. And that's, in terms of feedback and understanding people, is how we have to move forward. We have to go, instead of saying things like, I hate my job, my manager sucks, going, I really don't like my job at the moment because of the communication from my manager. I would prefer it if we had less one-to-ones. That would make me feel better. That's constructive criticism, where the manager's going, it's not a personal thing to me. That's the sort of behaviors we have to start encouraging, is the right ways of communicating effectively and taking kind of that empathy and compassion. To your point around participation trophies and things like this, it's very much they're trying to look at ways to balance it of, okay, we can't have people winning, people losing, people marginalized through, success and failure. But actually, how do you learn? You learn from failure. And, I've learned more from failure than I have from any success. And, I have very limited success at the best of times, but you know what I mean? You learn from your mistakes, you learn from things that go wrong. And if we try to sanitize that, then people aren't getting those experiences and they won't be able to learn. And I think that's a whole bigger conversation, really, to be honest. But
yeah. It just came in my head when we talked about it, because Pam's right. We need to get people comfortable being uncomfortable now. We need to have those conversations, but it seems like we're also doing things that would be counterintuitive to that. Now, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to give you some of the unpopular opinions that I have sourced when it comes to it's okay not to be okay. And Pam, I'll give you the first one, which is the concept of resilience is touted as the antidote to mental health issues, so if someone is resilient, they will not have any mental health problems because they have resilience. Doesn't sound right to me, but what do you think?
I think even with the bucketfuls of resilience, in a situation, you'll be fine, but there will be a situation that comes along that just touches that one nerve, that emotion, that it doesn't matter how resilient you are in the other 5 situations, it's going to take you some time to work that through. So, yeah.
It's a bit of a crazy one to me in terms of just going, our resilience is a problem, because people can be incredibly resilient and still in a really bad mental health place. And the fact that they're still functioning is huge resilience. It just so happens at some point, like I think you said this to me before. Oh no, it was Daniel Fincham from Recovolution, which is when you're going through recovery, you'll fall through glass ceilings, and you'll drop down, and people say you won't, you'll get to the bottom, and then you'll get to a certain point, and that'll be your line. And it's probably true with mental health and resilience. At some point, you just won't be able to fight back, and you'll fall because something's just pushed you over that edge. Charlie, I had to give you this one, which is the efficiency of digital mental health tools cannot replace traditional therapy.
So technology is a vehicle, right? It's a vehicle to scale conversations, to reduce stigma. It's not the answer. I'd also argue therapy is not the answer. The answer is the individual's behaviors, their self-awareness, their education. A therapist can give you all of the tools in the world. If you don't do them, if you don't understand yourself, if you don't be proactive for yourself, nothing's going to change. We use words like antidote. We use words like solving problems, fix me. And that's the wrong mentality. It's the wrong mentality around it. The mentality is, what can I do for myself, no matter how small, that improves how I feel, or how I deal with situations, or how resilient I am, or how happy I am each week. What small things can I do to help myself and others? And technology is an easy way to scale things. It's an easy way to help 1 million people rather than 10. But it's not to remove those conversations. If we can use a technology tool to help 1 million people have 10 conversations with loved ones around them and their family, that help them, that helps another 10 people to have conversations, because they're using a form of technology that goes, it simplifies it. They go, oh, I'm feeling feeling 70 out of 100, and my app's told me I'm stressed today because of sleep. They're now talking about mental health without thinking about it. So the answer is that conversation. It's actually, and I was speaking to someone that used our platform that stopped using it after 5 months. And they still every day think about what they're feeling, why. It doesn't matter that they've not logged it in the platform. They're doing what the platform's asked them to do. So the answer is out with technology, but technology is the best way to get it in people's hands, get them to do it, because it's discipline in the same way that exercising is discipline. Not everyone wants to go to the gym every day or run or walk, but doing it's good for you. So it's just creating habits that are healthy. But yeah, that one, you got me there. You got me.
I mean, I'm an online educator, obviously. You know, I deliver courses online, and I think I can talk about how online learning is more effective than traditional face-to-face learning in sense of, in some guises. In some ways, you always need that face-to-face. But if you take the really basic principle of the forgetting curve, which is you forget 90% within a week, well, unless you go back to that therapist and you cover the exact same session and you're never remembering it, whereas in a digital format, you can cover that same ground 20 times in a row, 30 times in a row. You can ensure it's ingrained in your brain. So you'll see people listen to the same song on repeat over and over again because it helps them. You can't necessarily have the same therapy session on repeat because it helps you, because there's not a chance that that person speaking to you can remember exactly what they said, exactly what you said. Whereas when something's recorded, you can remember it, you can recall the feelings. And that's one of the ways that online education, whether it be mental health education, whether it be education of content, can actually help someone ingrain knowledge and process into their life. So for me, I'm very much don't believe that you need traditional therapy. I'm mainly from an education perspective, because I think that's what a lot of this is. It's about educating yourself on what works for you, how you can improve your own mental health, how you can be there to support people that you care about's mental health. And sometimes you need repetition for success, because nobody can do anything first time perfectly. Some people can. They're annoying people. I don't like them.
That's the same example as the repetition of a song. Say, you know,
Yeah.
I used to love the Killers and I listened to Mr. Brightside 1,000 times. Fast forward 20 years, I haven't listened to it once. I bet you I could recite every single word of it, because you've remembered it, because it's imprinted. And that, if we do that for mental health, these are things that work, these are things that don't. You know, 30 years, when you have a really stressful moment where something hits you, a bereavement, grief, whatever it may be, a divorce, a lost job, losing your house, you can fall back on the things you remember. These are the things I need to do. These are the processes I need to go through. This is what I can control. And if more people can do that, it's work. It's work in the same way that you only improve on things if you try them, if you do them, if you're disciplined. It's not magic. It doesn't just come.
I was thinking about a magic mental health spell then, and I couldn't think of anything. Right, so we're going to finish with one tip you would give to anyone that is wanting to make a positive improvement to their mental health, Pam. So what one thing would you advise someone to do tomorrow or today that they've not done before to make a positive impact on their own mental health?
I think that the biggest thing that they can do is take the time to spend time with themselves and identify what is going to be working for them at this point in time.
That's a really good tip. Charlie, for you, what one thing can someone do today?
Pick a time every single day and do it for 30 days. 10 o'clock every morning, take 2 minutes to jot down what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, what am I going to do as a small thing to help that situation, no matter what it is, whether it's happiness, whether it's I'm feeling happy because of my family, I'm going to spend more time with them this weekend, I'm going to book in a special occasion with them, or I'm stressed because of work and deadlines, I'm going to do a small to-do list. Do that for 30 days and see what impact it has on your mood. Just do it, just go. It's going to take me a minute a day and I'm going to do it. If they do it, they might learn something. They'll see.
If you do it at 11:11 always shows up on my screen. You'll be golden.
Yeah, but that's the thing, you'll see. There'll be correlations, because it's the same thing. If you start talking about one thing you're grateful for in your life, one thing you're looking forward to doing, and one thing you're excited to overcome every day, the likelihood is you're going to start seeing similar things coming up over and over again. It might be a partner, it might be a friend, it might be an activity. And then you start learning from, okay, well, I love golf. I love spending time with my dad. And then you start going, right, these are things I need to do when I'm feeling low, because these are things that make me happy. If we don't understand ourselves, how is a therapist going to? How's medication going to help that situation? Just start proactively understanding yourself a bit more. And if you do it, it's worked for me. I haven't had a panic attack in 5 years. I've lost people. I've had stressful situations in work. I've had incredibly stressful situations in my personal life. I don't get panic. I don't get to that crisis because I know what I'm feeling. I know what works. I know what I need when I need it. So yeah, that would be very long-winded. That would be my suggestion. Probably 2 suggestions there.
Well, there you have it. Like 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem every year. So it may be you. So if you think about every 4 years, you'll probably go through something where you might need a little bit of help from someone you love, someone you care about, or even some sort of app or video or self-help. But if you can know yourself and you can really get to grips with what triggers you and how you go about things, you'll be okay if you're not okay, because you'll know how to improve yourself. Thank you very much to Pam and Charlie for giving me your insights and knowledge when it comes to this particular session. If you are an employer and you're thinking about, how can we improve mental health for our staff in the workplace? OK Positive is a great app to sort of start working with Charlie and his team in terms of how you can make your own employees aware of how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis. Thank you very much both for joining us, and we will catch you on the next one. Take care.